Well, welcome to another video. And today we're going to be looking at how God's existence practically affects us. How it affects us all in some way or another, even if you don't necessarily believe in the supernatural or in the existence of God. How even just the thought of God, or even the mere possibility of his existence affects us on a practical level, because it does. It affects everybody on a practical level. It can either invoke two emotions, I think. It can either invoke great comfort, or it can either invoke great discomfort. And one of the things that really stirs up this comfort or discomfort is the power involved. We looked at Genesis 1 verse 1, and one of the things that we saw was the immense power of this being. The fact that he could bring about the universe into existence must logically therefore mean that this being has great power. And so really I think this great power can either invoke either great discomfort or great comfort. And really it depends on how you view this God, how you view this being. Is he on your side or is he opposed to you? Those that would say he's on their side, obviously they get great comfort from that. They get great comfort that a being so powerful can be on their side, has the ability and the power to work things out for their good. But then again, those that may feel that this being is opposed to them or is somehow displeasured or displeased with what they're doing, or is just not on their side at all, that could be a source of great dread. Excuse me, a source of great dread for people. And so I think this really affects us all. No matter what you believe, no matter what your view take on this position is, just the mere possibility of such an incredibly powerful being will either invoke feelings of fear or perhaps feelings of comfort, knowing that a being exists who is capable of doing perhaps what you cannot, helping you in measures that others cannot help you with. And so it really, that's one factor. And I would argue that nobody is completely neutral. I don't believe there's a single person out there that is completely neutral on this subject. There is either a feeling of dread that they get when they consider the possibility of God's existence, or there's a feeling of comfort that they get when they contemplate God's existence. I don't think nobody's just kind of, whatever about it. If they really were to think about it, to contemplate the possibility of God's existence, does he exist, and if they were to think about it well enough and long enough, I think that they would either have great fear or great comfort. And a lot of this great fear or great comfort, as I said, it depends on how you view God, his attributes, his personality. Is he on your side? Is he loving? Is he wrathful? Is he, out to get you? It really depends on that. It really depends on your view of God and your view of your relationship to God. Now, of course, there's the deistic view of God, which of course is that God, there is a supreme being, and he just kind of spoke the world into existence, or he made the world, maybe not necessarily spoke it into existence, but he made the world, and he doesn't really have any care for the world. He just, for some reason he made it, just kind of left it on its own devices, has no really care to reveal himself to his creatures or to have a relationship with his creatures. He just created the universe and just kind of let it run on its own, no intervention from him, just kind of let it do its thing and let us do our thing. I guess in that model, or in that viewpoint, the deistic viewpoint, there probably isn't that, fear or comfort, because it's, God really doesn't have a preference for us, doesn't really care for us, doesn't really isn't concerned at all with us, and so there probably isn't that fear. But I'm talking about more of a theistic view of God. A theistic view of God, yeah, I think there is either great comfort or great discomfort. It can either invoke those two reactions. So I think contemplating such a being's existence is certainly going to invoke a strong emotional response, either one way or the other, either for the idea or against the idea. Another thing to consider is that with such power, and with being the creator, with God being the creator, there's a certain level of dependency we have on Him, and a certain level of control. God has every right to, every right and authority to direct and command his creation. He has every right to do that as creator. And so I think this also produces a level of either fear or comfort. And this, of course, gets into the sovereignty of God versus the free will of man, and that's a whole other subject which we will eventually get to, I'm sure, as we continue on in these series. But I think not only with the sovereignty of God, but also with just the ownership He has of us, that He has the right to tell us, what to do. And I think that can be, that can invoke a lot of times a negative response to this question of God's existence, because, especially of those of us who live in a Western society, is founded on democracy, on freedom. We feel constrained a lot of times. I think people feel often constrained and limited and slavish almost, that they're slaves. If they consider God's existence, that since He has the right and authority to command us what to do, we in our society, our Western societies, we love our freedom. We love our autonomy. The fact that nobody gets to, there are certain things that nobody can tell us what to do. There are certain liberties, certain rights we have. And when we contemplate, I think us in Western societies, when we contemplate this idea that there is somebody out there is a being out there who has every right to command us what to do, that's a little unnerving, I think, to a lot of people in Western societies. And so I think a lot of times that produces some negative emotional response to God. And so it does practically affect us. It affects a lot of things. But I think as far as the emotional response, people are either going to have a comforting aspect of God, and then there will be others who are terrified of the concept of God. And I don't think anybody is immune from this. And so that's one way to practically, how God's existence practically affects us. I'm not sure if the next video will be kind of a continuation on this theme with more, or we'll move into the next subject. But that's one way, of course, how God's existence practically affects every one of us, no matter what your viewpoint is.